Good evening, it's Caroline Flanagan. I am here doing my regular Monday Live. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Caroline Flanagan. What am I? I'm a certified coach, I'm a keynote speaker, I am host of the Caroline Flanagan podcast. So big shout out to you if you're listening to this on the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, today I want to talk to you about a new word that I've just invented. It's not a new concept, but I have created a new word to describe it. And that word is believability. And believability, to explain this to you, is the ability to believe in something before you have proof or evidence that it's true. Specifically, it's your ability to believe in your ability to create results, to create certain results, to create a certain outcome before you have that outcome reflected to you in the reality that you're living. Now, to make this more helpful, less vague, I'm going to talk specifically about feeling valued, feeling valuable, because that's something that comes up so much in my coaching, and I can hear it as an undertone to so many of the conversations that I overhear about confidence and about what you're trying to do in the workplace. I also think that feeling valued, feeling valuable is relevant at home as well. I mean, how important is it to us that we feel valued by those that we love, that we feel appreciated by those that we work so hard for and love and support? So I think it's super relevant both to you in your workplace, but also in your personal life too. So in terms of this podcast and this broadcast, which is what I'm doing today in both senses, I want to link it really to what the outcome is, right? So if you are able, if you are much better at your believability, I was just having a little visitor there in my room. So the more believable you are, the more you are going to be able to, the more you're going to show up as the thing that you believe yourself to be, and the more you're going to produce that result. So in the context of being valuable, then, the more you believe yourself to be valuable, the more when you show up to your day, when you show up to your relationships, when you show up to your work, the more you are going to show up as a valuable person, as valued. And that means when I say you're going to show up, I mean you're going to act from the place of being someone who's valuable. Now, I don't want you to confuse this with acting as if or pretending. I'm talking about really getting into a certain state that puts you in the best position to show up a certain way and to communicate that message to the outside world. For example, me in this broadcast, if I believe myself to be valuable, to be producing value and delivering that to you and delivering something that I believe is going to be useful to you, is going to create results for you if you put it into practice. If I show up really believing that that is who I am, then the way I show up to you is going to be so much more believable for you too. It's going to impact the amount of energy that I bring to my Facebook Live or to my podcast or to the YouTube broadcast. It's going to affect my enthusiasm, my conviction in sharing this important message with you. And it's going to therefore have much greater chance of having an impact on you than if I showed up to this session not believing really in my own value, not believing in the value of what I'm sharing with you, and not believing in the value of what it can create for you. My energy would be so much lower. Perhaps the information I choose to share with you will be so much kind of less convincing or weaker if in my mind I don't believe in the value that I can deliver to you today, or believe in my own value as the person who delivers this message. So hopefully that example has given you a sense of what believability is and the importance it has, because it determines how you act. It's not really about sitting back and saying, oh, I'll just believe that this will be true and therefore magically the universe will produce that result for me. for those of you who are familiar with the law of attraction, that's often the mistake that has been made, where there is this perception that, oh, if I just kind of attract or will something into reality, as long as I believe it's really true in my gut, then maybe that, and then sit around and wait for that result to materialize. That's not how it works. The belief part is fundamental to informing the action that you then take to create the result. In other words, you've got to believe, but you've also then got to get to work. And that's how you create these results. So the message I want you to take away from this broadcast is that you must believe first before you see the evidence, before you can expect to see the evidence around you. Now, I know, wouldn't it be so amazing if we could just have somebody tell us all the time that we're valued, have somebody tell us all the time that we are brilliant, and be able to rely on that to feel valued, to feel brilliant. But I've talked to you about external validation before and how important it is that you be able to validate yourself. And it kind of works in the same way. Like, it's super important that you are the one that can generate those very positive feelings and beliefs in yourself, because that is what is going to influence how you then act and show up, and therefore the result that you get. So belief first, proof later. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, then you'll know there's actually a whole episode on beliefs, the importance of beliefs, the importance of believing beforehand. So this does overlap a little bit, but I think in applying this specifically to this idea of feeling valued, wanting to be valued by others, by our employer, by our partner, by our children, by those around us, I'm applying the belief first, the believability aspect specifically to that scenario, which I hope you will find really practical. So, mistakes I want to encourage you to avoid. Mistake number one, and this is what typically, and I know this because I did it all the time, and if I'm not careful, I slip back into it. But it's this, what I see happening all the time. So if you make any of these mistakes, I want you to know that you are not alone. It's super common. It's actually really natural for us to do this. Mistake number one is waiting for evidence to appear. So waiting for evidence that you are valued before you are willing to see it in yourself. Now, is this something that you do? Are you someone who is heavily attached to that comment that you're hoping to get when you submit a piece of work, or the feedback that you're hoping to get when you do something wonderful at home or something really giving? So in the absence of that, are you able to see yourself as really valued by the other person, as really valuable to the other person? Or are you waiting for the evidence? And in the absence of that evidence, you conclude that you are not valued, you are not valuable at all. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is allowing others to question your value. Now, this came up in a talk I did actually last week, where we talked about where, or in organizations where there has been recent promotions of people of color, but also of women, and where there is the suggestion that there are quotas that need to be filled, and that this is undermining it's certainly undermining the confidence of some of those groups, of those minority groups, who are being promoted, for example, or being offered jobs. And what they are hearing and experiencing is direct, kind of blatant, sort of disrespectful comments from colleagues who are saying, you only got that promotion because the time was right, because there's a focus on diversity, promoting ethnic minorities, for example, or you only got that promotion because the quotas for women are need to be met. Therefore, implying and suggesting that you are not as valuable, you are not as valued, and that actually you have less to give and you're there somehow by fluke. And of course, that does really trigger the imposter syndrome, doesn't it? That feeling already that so many of you, and that I have regularly, of I don't deserve my success, or my success is down to luck. And so that's the second mistake, is where you are allowing those external comments that come from, by the way, somebody else's own issues, their own insecurities over themselves and whether or not they were promoted or why, allowing those insecurities to impact you and how believable you are able to be, right? How much you're able to believe in your own value and you being valued. So the second mistake, as I said, is letting other people's issues and their own insecurities to like that they project on you and taking that as some kind of proof that proof that you are not as valuable or valued as you'd like to be. The third mistake is generally underestimating the importance of all this mindset work. I probably should have led with this because I know that, especially as a lot of my listeners, a lot of my followers, a lot of you out there, you love the practical stuff. You want the step by step, and you're often in a real hurry to get there. And so I want to take a moment to just ask you to slow down and really recognize the importance of the mindset piece, of the thinking piece, the bit where it's all about the beliefs and what goes on in your brain. I cannot emphasize enough how important your internal beliefs about yourself, your mindset, how fundamental they are to not just how you feel, not just how you show up, but to the results you are getting in your life. And I'm going to go as far as to say that there are results that you are living right now. And by results, I mean the circumstances you find yourself in right now, in a job you love or a job you don't love, in building a business that is struggling or building a business that's doing really, really well, your relationships. In all of those areas, your mindset, your thoughts around what is going on around you are a fundamental factor in determining or fundamentally responsible is probably the best way to put it, for what you are living right now. So I want you to just think about that for a minute, that your thoughts, in short, are causing your current reality. How does that sit with you? How does that feel to think that everything that's around you right now, the experience of your life that you are living, is dictated by, has been almost produced by the thought you have? It's not the most comfortable of statements, is it? It's not the most comfortable of truths, because we don't want to look, do we, at the things in our lives that we're not enjoying and we're not happy with and think that we're responsible for creating those things with our thoughts. But that's exactly the message I want to give you in this episode, in this broadcast, is that it's your thoughts. Things take form as thoughts first, and then they become reality, not the other way around. One of the common examples I hear given, and hopefully this will work in terms of explaining this, is that, we have, so many of us have, let's say you have an iPhone or a phone. There was a thought about having a phone long before there was an actual phone. You couldn't actually have a phone if somebody hadn't had the thought to create a phone in the first place. And I'm talking about the days before there were mobile phones. It was somebody's idea to create a phone that we could carry around with us. Okay, so I want you to start questioning, or just have a look at, maybe just reflect on your understanding of the way things come into the world, the way results are created. And I want you to contemplate the role that your own thoughts are playing in the results that you are getting. And what I want to tell you about this in this podcast, in this episode, is that the thought bit is the bit we need to work on first before you get caught up into the doing and into the action bit. Get the thoughts sorted first. So that sounds like a massive digression, doesn't it? I was on point number 3, which is then the third mistake that is so common to make, and that was underestimating the thoughts, right? Underestimating the mindset piece. The fourth mistake I want you to look out for, be aware of, is that you let's say you believe it for a while and you think, yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to set out. I'm going to give this stuff a go. Caroline sounds quite passionate, excited, committed to this. And you set off and you decide to start believing something. You start to believe, oh, I'm going to be promoted this year. And then you even start to show up as someone who's going to be promoted this year. And then what happens? You're not promoted. Something sets you back. Something unexpected happens. You maybe are pushed back to the next year. And what do? You give up on the belief. You say this belief stuff doesn't work. Actually, I did believe, but it didn't work. And here's what I want you to know. The belief has to continue no matter what. The belief has to continue even when the evidence around you suggests that it's not true and suggests that the opposite even is the case. So the mistake I want you to avoid, the fourth mistake, is giving up too soon, stopping believing. And the commitment I want you to make, and that's a commitment I've asked of a client recently, is I want you to commit to a result until you get that result. And of course, she reflects back to me, well, how long is it going to take? How long am I supposed to keep believing like this until I recognize that it's not going to happen and I can't create that result? And it's the wrong question. The question is, okay, how hard do I need to believe in this? Right? Not for how long, how hard do I need to believe in it? And my answer is going to be, you need to believe in it and commit to taking every action from a place of belief until you get the result you want, and be absolutely committed. So we've committed to going all in on trying to achieve a result by the end of this year. And so my parting words to her, and what I keep coming back to, is like, we decided, you committed to going all in. That means believing and believing, and you keep showing up from that place of belief, even when you're not seeing any results, even when it's taking longer than you think. So 4 mistakes for you to look out for. Right, so what do you do then? How does this work in practice for you? So feeling, believing that you are valuable. What do I want you to take away from this episode I'm going to do? I want you to really have your own back and choose one thing. Choose one objective. It might be feeling more valuable. It might be being promoted. It might be improving or rebuilding a relationship at home. I want you to choose one objective, and I want you to commit to believing in it wholeheartedly. And then let that belief inform everything you do from that point on. So I've talked about the mistakes, right, that people make when it comes to believability. And I just want to reinforce really the things that now I'm asking you to choose an objective, choose a result you want to create. And I'm asking you to believe in that 100% and wholeheartedly. I want you to watch out for those mistakes. I want you to watch out for when there's no evidence and you want to stop believing. I want you to watch out for other people's comments that try to suggest to you that it's not going to happen or it's not true. I want you to look out for the thought that it's taking too long, yeah, and believe anyway. I want you to look out for the thought, well, I'm getting the wrong result. This isn't what I wanted. This is not what I'm going for. But I want you to believe in that, getting that right result anyway. And then the final thing, which is really important, is I want you to believe in yourself and your ability to create that result in a way that is sometimes considered a bit like being so sort of overconfident that you're kind of bragging, that you're being braggish. And I want you to, even if you feel that stating, I am going to be promoted this year, like believing in that wholeheartedly, even if you're worried that that sounds like you're bragging or being big-headed or being arrogant, I want you to still believe in it anyway, believe wholeheartedly. Because believability, it's not about arrogance. It's not about saying you're better than somebody else. It's not about any of that. It's only about what you tell yourself and what informs the action you take and how long you are willing to commit to that action. That's what believability is. It's just saying, right, every time I do something, I'm going to do it from a place of believing I can get that result. And even if that one particular action doesn't lead directly to that result, It's then finding a different action. It's iterating, finding a new path, trying something different that's going to allow you to get that result just through that, even if it's trial and error. So the believability, and hello to those of you who just joined me and are watching, believability is all about committing to the result until you get it. So practically then, what are my tips for what I want you to go away and do after this session? The first one is ask yourself, well, where am I now? How believable actually am I right now? And what I mean by that, take an example of how valuable you are. How valuable do I believe myself to be right now? Ask yourself that question. For lots of you, if you had to write down how valuable you feel you are, how valued you feel you are to those who matter, who you care about, who you want to value you, if you could write down the bullet points, what would you write? And what would they value you for? Often we want that feeling of being valued, but we don't really know specifically what we want to be valued for. And the reason why it's important to know that is because, remember, believing that you're valued is what informs how you show up for another person. So if you know, and I'll take myself an example with my clients, I want to be valued for being professional, for being insightful, for being inspirational, for being for challenging them, for being supportive. There's a whole list of things that I want my clients to see in me and to receive and to value me for. And the fact that I can articulate those things that I want to be valued for means I've got something concrete to believe in, right? I believe myself to be all of those things. And then for every client session I show up, I'm showing up as that person. I have in my mind, I believe myself to be insightful. I believe myself to be professional. I believe myself to be great at challenging them when they get stuck, or for helping them get clarity on an issue they're stuck with. As long as I'm believing that, I'm showing up in that way all the time. So try to articulate, first of all, what you believe yourself to be right now. But then secondly, how do you want to show up? How do you want to show up in your work or in your personal life, in your relationships? And then believe wholeheartedly in yourself as being that person. So that's number one and number two. Number three, in terms of practical steps I want you to take, I want you to believe in yourself actively. So that doesn't mean kind of going, oh yeah, I'm kind of a professional, successful person who's quite a good coach and not a bad speaker, and I'm doing the podcast and talking about me as an example. I want you to actively believe it. And the way you actively believe it is by having a concrete statement that you say out loud. Say it out loud to yourself. Say it, write it down. So by being active, I mean actually to practice believing something. And particularly when you have all those triggers that might question your belief. So let's say you believe you're working hard to believe in your promotion this year, and then you go to work and you get some sort of negative feedback. So just in those moments where you're being challenged, I want you to be able to come back and say, actually, I'm actively believing now. I'm consciously not taking that as evidence that I shouldn't believe in myself, and I'm staying with the belief. Yeah. So that statement that I'm going to still believe no matter what is you actively believing rather than just letting it float around in your head. The fourth practical tip, and there's one more after this, the fourth practical tip is to be curious. So when you start questioning yourself and doubting yourself on whatever it is, I want you to be curious about what's going on. Don't get sucked into believing that it's true. All the self-doubt, as those self-doubt voices start being triggered in your head. I want you to sit back and be curious and think, oh, how interesting. This is my favorite expression. When I like to observe my negative thoughts rather than get caught up in them and caught up in a downward spiral. I say to myself, oh, how interesting that I'm having that thought right now. How interesting that I am doubting my ability to meet my targets this year. How interesting that I've just had a difficult session with a client and I'm now starting to question whether I was useful to that client or not. So instead of going, oh, I don't believe I'm either good enough, I don't believe I can create that result, instead of doing that, I just step back and I observe my negative thought, and I observe it with curiosity and with interest. It's like, love the idea of, I imagine myself taking a negative thought out of my brain, having it in my hand and looking at it. So having a bit of distance from it and just going, how interesting, I'm having that negative thought in this moment. And as soon as you do that, it takes so much of the power of that negativity away and allows and creates room for you to keep believing, keep growing that believability. And then last but by no means least, in order to really work on your believability so you can create those results you want, I want you to use your imposter speech. Now, for those of you who have been on Mars and haven't listened to any of my, either on my podcast or on these broadcasts, the imposter speech, I've done a whole 8-episode series on the imposter speech. You can listen to it on the podcast or here in the Facebook live replays or on YouTube. And the imposter speech is this powerful, personal, portable statement that sums up everything that is incredible and valuable about yourself. It draws on your successes, it draws on the values that drive you, it draws on all of the failures that you have had to bounce back from, pick yourself up from, and it draws on your purpose, what really motivates and matters to you in terms of the impact that you can have on the world. That imposter speech, if you've nailed that, if you've got that in your pocket, then you can bring that out anytime when you are doubting yourself, when you need to find the energy and the drive to properly believe in your ability to achieve or create a particular result. So that's all from me this week. I hope you found this episode on believability at least thought-provoking, and certainly that part, and this is what I want you to leave you with, that part which is about where results come from, how results are created, the fact that they start with a thought. And your job, your mission is to create the goal that you're trying to achieve. I want you to create that as a thought first and believe in that thought wholeheartedly before you expect to see living proof of it. So believe first. Go to work, show up from a place of believing in yourself, believing in your value, believing in your ability to create the results you want in your life or in your work, in your relationships. Go out and act always from a place of strong belief. And that is going to be your biggest chance of producing those results going forward. So if this is something you want to take further, a couple of suggestions for you. First of all, join my Facebook group. It's called the Imposter Syndrome, Imposter Speech group. And I'll be appearing here live every Monday to talk about all things imposter syndrome and the importance of your imposter speech. Another way to follow me and get value is you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I would encourage you to sign up to my newsletter if you haven't already. Go to carolineflanagan.com. You'll see there's a box there where you can just type in your email, sign up to my newsletter, and you will receive updates of all this type of work that I am bringing to you live every week. But also, crucially and excitingly, I'm going to be launching my new Imposter Speech program in the next 6 weeks. I'm not going to give you the exact date. I'm going to keep you in a little bit of suspense, but it's going to be sometime in, I think it's looking like sometime in June right now, but I'm going to confirm that to you. But if this is something that you think you would like my help with taking further, if you are ready to work on your imposter speech, if you've seen and understood the real value of the imposter speech in so many different aspects of your work and in your life, and of course, just with you, your own sense of self, identity, mental health, then you have to sign up to my newsletter and find out more about this imposter speech program. You would absolutely love it, and I'd be so excited to support you to achieve that. That's it from me for now. I wish you a wonderful week and look forward to seeing you next week. Next Monday, I will be on this live broadcast and bringing the podcast the next day. Thanks. Take care. Bye for now.